Hey, it's Tim here. Today, something a little bit different. I'm posting a recording of a recent panel that I had the privilege to host. It was a panel titled Thriving Together in the AI Era. This panel was run off the back of a really great conference talk that was redone here as part of this user group. And then on top of that, we had a little bit of a demo of what's coming up in the Tableau ecosystem this year, with some headlines and some timings that I think are going to be super important. You should be seeing them on screen. The really key thing is that we talk a lot about AI and sometimes we don't get a chance to do it as a community. And so this panel was exactly that. We had 5 incredibly talented individuals from the community coming together from different walks of life to discuss what we'd just seen and also talk about some of our concerns, challenges, and opportunities that AI has to offer. And so I've posted it here on my channel to give it a little bit more exposure. And another thing to call out is that this panel is pretty much the same feel and kind of vibe you get from a Tableau user group. And so that's actually how many people attended this session. We had roughly 500 people attend. Many user groups around the world have that kind of audience when they're online. Many others are in person, and I highly encourage you to go to those because you get to build your network. So another call out to just really engage with Tableau user groups. They're super valuable. I've learned so much from the user groups that I've both presented at and been part of. So I highly encourage that you do that. You should be seeing the link on screen. Enjoy the session. I think there's so much everyone can learn. I've done a decent job putting the timestamp so you can pull out the themes that you care about and see how the panel answers the question. Everyone had so much to share. It was my turn to sit and listen. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one, but for now, enjoy the panel. Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And let's sort of do a round warm welcome to the rest of the panel. I want to just briefly open it first by, I think, highlighting something really important. My job here is to moderate this panel, but I think the thing we sometimes forget is that when we have an opportunity to learn something, I think learning is best done in a community. And so we've just seen a series of amazing talks from really incredible people. We've seen the product. We've seen a little bit about AI. What this panel is really about is talking about sort of what we're all thinking and sort of processing some of that. And I think this is an incredible opportunity to do that. And so I'm joined by some great individuals. I'm joined by Joy, who's a data analyst at Data edX Group. She's also a Tableau ambassador for the Tableau AI Tug. Joy, are you with us?
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for the introduction, Tim.
No, you're welcome. Welcome. Next up, we have Will, who's an executive director for finance, data, and insights at JP Morgan Chase, and also Career Path Makers user group leader. Will, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Good. Next up, we have Maya from the Data Leadership Collaborative, your advisory board member and CEO of Savvy AI.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here.
And last but not least, we've got Rain, who runs the user group program here at Tableau. Rain, how are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. There are 518 people on this call right now. That is incredible. Represent Datafam.
Absolutely. It's a great turnout. I really love it. I think we've got a great lineup today on the agenda, so everyone's turned up in full force. The first thing I want to start with is what's running through everyone's mind, having seen the talk from Natalie, but also the preview from Tableau and the product. Maybe Maya, if I start with you first.
I loved the talk from Natalie, especially around empathy, because we are in a time of tremendous change. And when we talk about technology, it's almost seeming like everyday technology is becoming easier and easier in certain ways. But getting folks to embrace the technology, understanding our role in a world with this new technology, that requires a lot of empathy and understanding, and just a lot of humanity in very many ways in the face of AI.
Absolutely. Will, you're up next.
So I really focused on trust. If I was playing like bingo, the trust would be like the number one key that was quick and easy. And being data people, seeing how do we understand and trust what's behind the scenes is really where my brain continues to just like focus on. So that's really one of the things that I just took out of that.
Thank you. And Joy, how about you?
My favorite thing was looking at the different perspectives people had on a particular topic. So someone came from a more humanities standpoint where she talked about the effects of these things, trust, our world, how it's affecting climate and everything. And that was very interesting. And we also got to see from like the product aspect. So the fact that we could see different melting points of the same topic was very interesting for me.
Amazing. And Rain?
I think I got a lot of reassurance from that talk. So I'm going to acknowledge right now that technology is moving at the speed of light right now. And I think it's giving us a lot of anxiety as data analysts and just data people about what our role is going to be in the future, and if we have a role in that future, right? But from everything we saw from both of these speakers, there is absolutely a human element to be had. We are essential to this equation. And so we're never going to not be part of it. It's just figuring out what that niche is and allowing these tools to enhance our everyday.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think you've all done me a favor because you've made it really easy for me to pull out. I think some recurring themes throughout today. The first one is obviously embracing change. This technology is moving incredibly fast. The headlines yesterday are different to today, right? The next one is on that point of trust from Will. You know, that what we're really talking about there is how do we implement these things in a way that we feel that we can control. So innovation and implementation, I think, is sort of a good headline for that. And then the very last thing is obviously we are people, we are human. I think that came out through Natalie's talk throughout today. How do we do this in a collaborative and a communal way? So those to me feel like sort of the three important themes, and I think I'll use that as a sort of a headline of how we can approach discussion. And I know you've all got sort of different perspectives and deep dives that you've all sort of talked to me ahead of time. So let's get into that a little bit. If we open up with the first point around embracing change, Maya, if I could sort of start with you again. Have you seen examples where organizations have successfully navigated this transition, sort of how they've started to think about AI?
I would say the most successful organizations I've seen are those that include stakeholders from various departments, not just technology stakeholders. Because ultimately you're building this technology for a set of folks individually. And so it's important to include them in the conversation, or for maybe a set of external users. It's important to collaborate with them, to ask them, are we really solving your problem, or are we just slapping some technology at it and hoping that, you know, you will be distracted by the shiny object? Also, the organizations that I see most successful with AI are the ones that are educating their teams, getting their teams to have their hands on various AI tools and empowering them to upskill with those tools versus saying, and this is a phrase I really get so sick of hearing, is like, you won't be replaced with AI, somebody using AI will replace you. And I'm so tired of that because it's such a trite way of explaining a really complicated concept. All of us have encountered AI every single day. Every time we use Google Maps, or every time, you know, we have autocomplete, we've encountered some sort of AI or received an offer in the email that was related to a product we just bought. We are already much more AI fluent than we are giving ourselves credit for. And you don't have to be a data scientist, or you don't have to have these advanced data skills. You can upskill where you're already starting from.
Absolutely. And I think just to sort of follow on from that, I think AI has become this tagline for a bunch of disciplines that were previously sort of given their own space, like machine learning, stats. All of this stuff has just been bundled into AI. And it's a really good point you bring up, because actually we've all been doing this for quite some time. It's not that radically new. And just to sort of build on that, how Joy, if I come to you as a data analyst who's sort of working with this technology, how do you see sort of the challenges, someone who's navigating this field, as someone who's learning and building? And obviously you've got the AI user group. What have you seen in that user group that sort of speak to what Maya's talked about there, how we're using AI?
Yeah, I think what Maya said about upskilling with the tools, that's what our Tableau user group is about. So the AI and Tableau user group basically brings everyone to a community. It's a safe space for us to talk about these tools and how AI is either changing it or affecting it. So now we have leaders from the Tableau core team itself. So we have product managers, researchers. We see people who are actually building these tools come to talk to us. every month or quarterly. And at our events, you also get to see people who use these tools. So, for example, you see individuals, data analysts, data scientists, and they all come and show people, okay, this is how I use this tool in my day-to-day activities. This is how it has made me more productive, and this is how you can do it too. And we also have conversations from pessimists and optimists, people who are scared about the tool, and we have people who are optimistic about the tool. And my favorite thing is bringing the core team on the hot seat. That is absolutely my favorite. So we get to ask very, very difficult questions. So we're asking them, if we keep using these tools, who is going to use, where is our data going? And we keep asking, okay, the new research that's coming, what is this tool going to do? What is that tool going to do? And how can people use it effectively? What are the dangers about this? And it's always very nice to put the people building this technology on the hot seat and asking them like the really tough questions and getting the answers you want. So the community helps people grow, helps people ask questions. And again, like I said, it's a very safe space for us to grow and thrive along with this technology.
Yeah, I think as analysts in this industry, this analytics has been moving quite fast for some time, I think, and there's always like a new trend every couple of years. So I think we're naturally sort of well built for this kind of change. We're kind of used to adopting new things very quickly, new ideas, new philosophies. This is just another sort of technology, but I think it sort of nicely leads into the point around implementation. And Will, I know you raised some sort of points about trust here. If I can come to you as someone who leads a team who's probably thinking at a much higher level about how to do this. So what are the big challenges around trust and transparency that you'd like to sort of deep dive into?
Well, so it's one of those things that I look at with like a skeptic mindset. Not that I don't think they can do this, but again, being data people, we're so used to data where I write a query and anybody can write the exact same query and get the exact same results. Whereas if I have 5 analysts on my team that ask the same thing, ask the same prompt, they're not going to get the exact same results. And so it could be based on how they have been training their model, how the model has been, evolved. There's many aspects that I can't just look at it from a show your work perspective. And so that's where the trust really, we have to work with the creators. We have to give the feedback. We have to understand ourselves that human element still needs to exist. I can't just copy and paste this analysis into a report or whatever. I mean, so that's how, from a trust perspective, I look at it. But on the flip side, if I'm not talking about like a data analyst perspective, there's so many strengths that we can use. I'll tell you, my ADHD brain, I always say the first thing that comes to my mind. People can interpret those things as like emotional in one way or the other. So I've really embraced it from I'll type an email, put it in the LLM and say, take out the emotion, make this more fact-based, or give me a better way to phrase these things, or I'll give the bullets and say, can you make a sentence out of this because I think in bullets. So like it's not, I know we're in a data talk right now, but it's not just AI's only for this piece. It is so broad. And so I don't know if I've answered your question or gone down another rabbit hole.
No, absolutely. The more rabbit holes you open, the more we can talk, and that's a good thing. So not a bad problem at all. If I sort of open it up more to the panel as well, like around this sort of point around innovation and implementation, what have you all sort of seen or even thought about? Because I think this is something that's still a work in progress. So are there any sort of perspectives that maybe people want to add to what Will has said there?
Go ahead,
Maya. Oh, sorry. Yeah, right.
Sure. I also want to acknowledge that as we have all of these tools coming out, especially around agents and agent force, data analysts are not only going to be training these, interacting with these, but they're also going to be managing the data that comes out of these. So we have whole new data streams that we're going to be encountering associated with the telemetry with these agents and their efficacy. So it is a brand new world, both from the front end and from the back end. And I think it's a really exciting time as well.
Yeah, it's good. And Maya, I think you had something brief to add.
I just wanted to briefly say I love that point on trust, Will. It's so important. And I think that, you touched on it needs explainability. The way to build trust is transparency, explainability, repeatability, but most importantly, also guardrails. I don't think we talk about this enough in AI because we're just plowing forward always, but there need to be guardrails put in place that are often hard and fast business rules that we already live by every day, and we don't need the AI to relearn. And that's all about building the trust so that folks can kind of take their hands off the wheel a little bit more every single day.
Yeah, and that kind of feeds into this point around implementation, right? Because I think on one hand, understanding how something works is vital, but no two organizations are the same. And so I think that naturally leads into this sort of follow-on question, which is, let's say you find an AI use that's actually good and it works and you understand its sort of purpose, as Natalie was talking about. How do we implement these technologies? Sort of where would sort of people start to think about implementing these technologies in their organizations? Maybe, Will, if I go back to you again, just to touch on your perspective as well.
I mean, so working at a large global financial institution, we have so many controls, governance, regulations. There are so many things that it's very hard for us to say like, hey, I've externally found these models and I want to bring these into the firm. So there's a lot of guardrails
Right.
that companies should, like Maya said, be putting up, understanding how do we have controls? How do we make sure that we're not bypassing, the security, it's very, fortunately, I don't have to make those decisions and I'm not in those meetings to define the complexity. But I am the beneficiary of, once those things do go live, going through all those models, that we work with our teams to say what makes sense to apply, when do we apply it, how do we apply it, and like adapt and evolve. I know you touched earlier, it's like every couple of years there's new things. So a few years back it was big data, then it was cloud, and now everything is AI. And it's just, we're going to keep all those things still exist. And the people who embrace those early, like, got to embrace the new things. And so I'm, again, going back to this, like, I'm embracing this. This is great. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because I think, Rain, I was going to come to you because obviously leading the Tableau user groups, you also work at Salesforce, and Salesforce is one of the companies that's sort of pushing this change, right? And so from a internal perspective, how are you finding that implementation? Because essentially you have to dog food the implementation before you tell customers sort of how to do it. So maybe share a bit of a perspective, sort of trials and tribulations, if you can share some. I think that would be really useful for the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just want to acknowledge that we're all learning together as all of this rolls out, and I find a lot of solace in that. Internally, we are doing a ton of internal enablement on what all of these tools actually do, and we're trying to make it less of a black box, right? AI really seems like this magical thing that you put in a query to and you get something out, but we're not really sure what happens in the middle. And so we're really trying to pull back the curtain on that. And to Maya and Will's point with guardrails, I really do believe that these AI models are reflections of ourselves, right? So whatever we put into them is what we're going to get out. So data governance and data quality are something that internally we're always very concerned about. And that's why I'm really excited that these models that especially like Agentforce is based in is guardrailed so heavily and has checks for biases and toxicity and things like that. So that makes me feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, thank you. And Joy, I think from a user group perspective, are people coming together as a community to sort of think about implementation in general? Like, what are you seeing from some of the early user groups you've done? Because your user group is still quite young, right? So, you're probably getting quite sort of a young crowd together. So, yeah, what are you sort of seeing happen on the ground?
So implementation has actually ranged from doing like very basic stuff to doing more complex things. So one of our leads actually created a mock star GPT. So what that did was you could create a mock data set for whatever thing you're trying to build. So excuse me, if you're just like starting out in data analysis and you need a data set for marketing, for example, not every company has their marketing data readily available on the internet, or you need something to practice, something to work with.
Right.
So far we have like over 1,000 people use that particular GPT, and so from that, we've been able to see people in our community and people in Datafam actually use these things, implement them in starting out their own journey and in using it to learn. We've also seen people doing a lot more things with agents, making their work a lot faster and just improving their efficiency. So there's different levels of implementation from people who are learning to people who are experts, and it's just very interesting to see that in all walks of lives and based on like your different expertise, you can actually still implement this. And having a community where you can see how people use this and also replicate it is very good.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that perspective. It's interesting because I think the other way that we all learn is by making mistakes, right? So I guess I'd ask the group in general, what mistakes have you seen people make, or what mistakes have you made that you're willing to share that maybe we can start to sort of discuss here? I know we haven't got a lot of time, but maybe the standout things that you've seen. Anyone willing to go first?
Oh, I'll just jump in. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people try to swing for the fences their first time at bat, which is a sports analogy to say they try to take on a project that's way too big because everyone wants to transform everything rather than taking smaller steps and learning. The problem with these big projects is they're often very high risk, very long timelines, very high expense. A lot of folks looking at it saying, where's this going to go wrong? Where is this going to go wrong? There are so many smaller things that you can do around your organization. Pick the right problem to start. Pick something that's mid to low risk, that does have impact to the business, somewhere where you can really cut your teeth on AI, and then build on that success to build more AI flows into your processes.
It's really valuable. You've definitely seen a few mistakes, I'm sure. Will, anything that you maybe heard of other companies in your sector doing that you think, oh, maybe let's not try that?
No. So I'll take more on the personal route, right? Like when I first took on ChatGPT and I was like, give me a lesson plan on how to train Tableau in 3 days. Give me this, give me like, I was trying to swing for the fences personally, and I was getting stuff and I was just trusting it. I was like, man, this is so damn good. And it was good, but could it have been better? So I started learning about evolution of like, how do I prompt? How do I give feedback? Because a lot of it, I'd take the initial output and then go do something over here from the human aspect, because that's my muscle memory, to the point where now I've gotten so comfortable with it where New Year's Eve, I did my whole dinner plan using Gemini because we canceled our stuff last minute. I told Gemini, the basic prompt was, I've got 2 hours to make a nice dinner. It needs to be child friendly, and I want it to be kind of special and foodie. And then it gave me some ideas, and I said, okay, good, but I need recipes. Gave me recipes of those things. And I said, well, that's good, but I need a shopping list. It gave me a shopping list. I went to the store, came back and said, I really suck at time management. How can I be efficient with this time to make it in a small time? And it gave me all the steps. It combined, and it was just like, I built it as a conversation, as a companion, like a sous chef. Yeah. And it was so much. So the adoption of like, I want everything, give me everything, to the point of where now it's like, okay, now I see how this fits and how it molds. And I'm applying the same thing at the office as I start saying, okay, well, I'm going to take that step back and realize where are we at? Where can we go? But how do we baby steps to get there?
Yeah, and you touched on something crucial there, because I think through prompting you are defining scope in a way that kind of really narrows the AI into something specific to you, but also the scenario. You know, you could have started out with maybe two sentences that ask the same thing, but because you kind of stepped through the problem, I think you got a better quality output, and as a result, you probably had a much more rewarding experience. The agency in your own ability to direct it was actually quite good, to borrow a phrase from Natalie. So that's super important. And Joy and Rain, I don't know if you've seen anything in the world, even it doesn't have to be from a work context, that you'd sort of highlight to people to try and avoid.
I think one thing I've noticed is people not asking a lot of questions. So this is still new. And there's a lot of things we still don't know. And there's a lot of things that we do know. But asking questions is where, like, you get the freedom to know exactly what is going on and the issues that bother you. There are difficult conversations about this technology, and feel free to ask. Ask the tough questions, ask the dumb questions, ask the hard questions, and just ask questions, basically. Yeah.
It's a simple but great advice. Just ask. Yeah, honestly, that's just such a. It's so easy to forget that point. We're all not experts. Even the experts clearly aren't experts at the moment. So that's something that we can all learn from. And Rain, maybe from your perspective as well, is there anything that sort of stands out as something you think people should learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just echo what Joy just said. Ask questions, really interrogate things. So I'm going to use just a very simple example. Every single time that you search anything on Google at this point, you are getting an AI summary first and foremost. I want us to be really careful about treating AI like it is a silver bullet for all problems and forgetting our critical thinking skills, right? It is so important now to interrogate where these responses are coming from and the validity of these responses and the sources that these AIs these AI models, are pulling from. When we see something like Google saying, yes, a human should eat 8 cigarettes a day, we know that that is false. We just know that, right? But when the responses seem more reasonable, we need to come at it with that same level of skepticism and curiosity as well. And we're going to learn a lot more along the way as well.
And I think that's links to a point Nasi made around ownership, right? I think sometimes when we're doing things, we're asked to do work. We think of it as a task, but actually we own the process, right? We come up with a plan, we deliver the work, and then we actually present the work. So we have a sense of ownership and pride as well. That's sort of part of that. And something I've talked about is this sort of idea of when you sort of hand off too much of that to AI, you kind of lose a connection with the final output. And I think it's that connection is actually what makes it human, and that's what sort of makes us build sort of rapport with each other in the workplace, with our products, with the work we do. So I think it's very, very sort of important point. On the point around AI, I think we talk a bit about it like it's one thing, right? We talk about it like it's one discipline. That we've said earlier on that it's actually a bunch of disciplines. I'd love to sort of dig into that a little bit more. Are there any sort of pockets within? I'd say AI has sort of become the headline, but maybe we talk about machine learning, maybe we talk about sort of statistics, maybe we talk about predictive analytics. These are all, I guess, now, unfortunately, subheadings of AI. So are there any elements of those things that you are sort of excited to see improve or develop or get more airtime? Because now they're all part of the discussion, right? Maybe Maya, I saw you nodding your head, so I should have directed that to you.
I mean, I love me some old-fashioned mom jeans machine learning. I think we are not using it enough, and we've jumped a lot of enterprises are jumping from 0 to I want to fine-tune an LLM, and we forget that AI is essentially a toolkit. And just like in a toolkit, every tool is good for different types of use cases, for different types of data. LLMs might be great for certain types of unstructured data. There's vision models that take care of looking at objects and making classifications. There's recommendations. There's now decisioning that we're talking about more and more, where multiple models are blended together to make better decisions. we can't think of it as a one-size-fits-all solution, even though it's easy to just bucket it all under the AI umbrella. I would encourage folks, especially the data people listening on this broadcast, to, if you work in tabular data, do not forget machine learning. It is excellent in these scenarios. It is really, and it has explainability and it has transparency, and you don't have to worry. It's been around for decades. People have tested it out quite thoroughly at this point. But do find the best tool for the job, whether that be an LLM or not.
Are there any other perspectives linked to that sort of, any of these subsets that you've all used maybe in the past that you're excited about?
So I know Joy talked about the early on adoptions of some of the GPTs within the community. I loved one of the things that Adam Miko put together from a data viz. I forget the exact name of the GPT, but basically you can do a summary of like, is this viz good? Like, what's the quality of the viz? Is it readable? And he put in a lot of criteria behind it. So to me, the visual aspect, being able to look at a picture, my brain immediately went to companies could start implementing, brand guidelines, put in accessibility, put in all these different things, and say, looking at the viz, are the fonts readable? Are the colors good? You start defining what your guidelines are and start feeding some of that stuff through there. And so like my brain goes towards it just boggles my mind how we can do all of that. So that's where I'm excited about.
Good. Joy, Rain, anything that stands out for you?
Something stands out to me, but it's not exactly exciting. So not to be the killjoy here, but an important thing to me is security. Right. So we're putting all our data in models, and how secure is this, right? How many companies are thinking about their security and in very efficient ways? Because we've seen a lot more attacks going on lately, especially with like deepfake modifications of injections and so many things going on. And these are important conversations to have. So as much as we're excited about like what AI can do, where we can just put our data in and by some miracle it solves all our problems, we should also be very concerned about the security of our data.
Yeah, it's a great point. We all use, if you use like a web portal for any of these services, one of the reasons they keep a certain amount of usage free is because in using it, you're putting data into it, right? You're putting questions, you're asking perspectives, you're typing a lot about yourself into that text box. And that all goes somewhere, it's stored and it's used to improve the model. But as you say, it contributes to the model in some way or form. I've had the fortunate chance of being referenced in an AI model in regards to an explainer about Tableau pie charts, and it literally used my wording in the response, and it linked to my video, and I was like, okay, that's slightly weird, but that point about security is super important. And of course, AI models intrinsically in the way they're built, they use vector databases. You lose that lineage actually once they're built. Once these AI systems are stood up, that lineage that allows you to ask the question about security is lost. So I think it's a really sort of valuable point to remember. If we maybe move on to collaboration and community, that's sort of what we're here for. We're an amazing community. We have over 500 people online watching this. How do we do this together? How do we form sort of maybe call them teams or groups within our organizations that can take on these sort of small challenges, these small tasks of understanding how best to do this? What's sort of the best way to do that? Rain, maybe you're in Salesforce, you're doing internal enablement. How are you sort of like solving that problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. So putting transparency first is absolutely the first thing that we should be doing. So what we don't want is to unlay onto our companies without any explanation of what it's doing and why it's doing and what sorts of problems it's appropriate for. So being very transparent about what this tool is doing and what kinds of problems it can actually solve versus what's out of its scope is extremely important. As far as bringing people together, that's what things like user groups and internal user groups are really useful for. When we learn as a community, embedded in a community of our peers who are all working on similar problems, we're always going to learn faster. And especially when there's a little bit of joy and play in it, like I do see in all of our Tableau user groups. I think somebody dressed up as an agent in one of our recent user groups. That is really when all of that learning comes together in real life applications. So it's really important that we get hands-on with real data as soon as possible, rather than just training sets or just theoretical learning.
So I would say my my favorite thing about this industry that we're in, data visualization as a career path, the thing that brought me in was the community, because I wasn't alone and people were so giving of their time, effort, and energy. And keeping that mindset, we will be just as successful in this space. And so whether it's having coffee and talking to somebody that works in the same area as you at a Tableau user group, it doesn't necessarily have to be the AI user group. Some people can present at other user groups and kind of say, how does it come together? Just basically, it is the more we share, the more we're open about our experiences, that might spark ideas that somebody else had. My idea for creating dinner for New Year's Eve was because I'd seen some reels about people saying ADHD people, there's a way to create a shopping list. And so in my mind, I said, well, if you can create a shopping list, can it tell me how to just combine all these recipes? So it's all these little ideas of just us helping each other, and we continue to stand on the shoulders of the people, before us, and we'll be the shoulders of others. So it's just keep growing.
It's that incremental sort of journey, right? Like the more we share, the more we can all learn from each other. And I think user groups are a great vessel for that. But there's also plenty of experts outside of our Tableau community, right? There's experts in the AI community, there's experts in other tools as well. We can bring that knowledge and those best practice into our group. Then I think it's a really good way to help accelerate that, but also show that we're all coming at this from sort of different angles, and we can all sort of bring disparate perspectives. And I think it's also important to include cultural perspectives, because I know that a lot of AI tools are fundamentally just grounded in English. And so they lack a lot of sort of a cultural awareness inherently, just because of the way they're trained and the way they're set up. So we as a community have to sort of step to the plate and actually fill those gaps in the way that we use, train, and make sure that we bring everyone along with us. It's a super, super important sort of element there. The other thing I wanted to ask in general is, a lot of these AI tools, there's lots of different AI tools, right? So you might have heard ChatGPT, DeepSeek is sort of a conversation today. Alibaba did Quen something yesterday. There's so many different ones. In talking about AI, are any of you sort of building a paradigm on how to approach which model to use, when, how, that sort of decision? Because we've talked a lot about whether or not and how to use AI. What about which one to choose? How do you choose one? How do you sort of experience one? Will, you talked about Gemini. Why did you do Gemini and not sort of ChatGPT? Maybe I'll ask that to you first.
I just wanted to try it out and see. I've had ChatGPT app on my phone for a while. Like I think it knows me in the aspect of like I've trained it to based on my various prompts and how I do things. And so I wanted to see. I've not really used Gemini. I'm an Android user. I have the app on my phone. Let's try it and see. And to me,
Worked.
I don't know enough between the different models to be able to say, oh, this is why I would choose this version of ChatGPT, this model. I'm just experimenting until someone can tell me the specific reasons, or I find the specific reasons. It's just trial and error.
You and me both, right? We're just trying everything until something sticks. Any other perspectives on that?
I'm a big fan of staying model agnostic. The industry is just changing much too fast. to just, bet the farm on one model and say this is going to be the model that wins. I think we all learned our lesson with, as I call it, the DeepSeek freak out that happened earlier this week when everyone discovered a model that was available since December, and what that means for the industry. I think if you back into it with starting with what's the problem I'm trying to solve, which model is best to solve this problem, and stay flexible and loose, especially if you're designing for an enterprise framework to these different models. Because look, these models are going to get faster, better, cheaper. And if you overly build towards one type of paradigm, you're really closing the door to these new innovations. I prefer Claude, for example, for writing. I think it's a little bit stronger when it comes as an editor and a writing assistant than some of the other models. But I might flip back and forth between models. I might use Perplexity for search. I might use this for... So it really depends on the use case. So kind of start with the problem you're trying to solve, then do a little bit of research, but remember to stay flexible about it.
Yeah, it's a great point, actually, because we live in a world where I think analytics tools have become commoditized, but commoditized in a good way. For example, the number of integrations we have today with Tableau, whether it's DBT or the numerous database connections, you can sort of pick and choose and build your own sort of analytics journey. And the challenge with AI is that it's sort of landlocked because the investment required to build this model is so substantial that really, unless you're the big six, you don't have a chance of training anything as powerful as that. So we're all essentially customers of, fundamentally maybe a handful of really good tools. But if you go into the community like Hugging Face, you'll actually find there's a really diverse community of models that all do very small but powerful things, whether it's image recognition or maths or Python, whatever it is, coding, like all of these disparate things. And the big tools suck up a lot of the energy, but maybe we could all do a bit more to sort of demand more from smaller, more capable sort of niche models that do very specific things, but very, very well. And actually maybe run on our laptops as well to save us having to share things into the internet as well. Any other perspectives? I'm just going to open, sort of encourage everyone who's watching this, because I know there's a bit of lag, to ask questions, because we've only got 5 more minutes. So please ask questions in the Q&A, and we'll start going through them in about 2 minutes. But just before we do that, we probably should sort of touch on sort of any sort of bits of wisdom. If you were to sort of leave this panel and tell some of the people watching this session today to do something about AI, what would that thing be? So if I just go around the panel, I'll start with Joy, because you're top of my screen, Joy. If you could tell people to do something about or with AI today, what would it be?
I would say to join a community, right? I joined the Datafam because I was interested in a tool, but I stayed for the community. So join the community today. There's amazing people everywhere, people that would always look out for the best for you, and will teach you and definitely guide your experience. So join one.
That's also a great t-shirt, pick Tableau, stayed for the community. Love it.
Exactly.
Okay, next up, Will. Any bit of wisdom for the audience?
I'd say just stay curious. Like Joy talked about, or just keep asking questions. Because the more questions you ask, the more you learn, and then those questions are going to lead into other questions. And so it's the beginner's mindset is just such a critical thing. We just always have to take that on.
Amazing. Rain?
I'm going to echo everything that was just said. Join a community, ask questions, and also learn. Learn as much as you possibly can. Even if you are deeply skeptical about AI, if you think it's the best thing in the world, you need to learn. If you are pursuing a career in data or really anywhere, learning the language is your very first barrier. So be sure that you are fluent in this AI world, just in terms of the basic terminology, and that will get you really far. So stay curious and stay critical, and also join a community. Find people who are learning together so you can learn from one another.
Wow, +1 to everything Joy, Will, and Rain just said. I would just also like to say from a much more eloquent Maya Angelou, she said, every journey begins with a single step. Do not get intimidated, just get started. A lot of these tools are free to use, free to try. Just start. Start and you'll learn, and start and you'll form community, start and you'll find others to talk to. Just start.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. That's really sort of thoughtful. And I think it's a nice way of encapsulating everything that we've sort of seen today. We've got time for maybe one question. I can see a question here from Scott. I'll just ask it. Does anyone see AI replacing a dashboard designer developer? He's referencing a video from Andy Cotgrave where he got the AI to sort of prompt him through building a dashboard. So I don't know if anyone's seen that video, but more generally, that question about being replaced. Anyone want to take that? Yeah, Will.
I'll take that question with a similar meme that I have seen. I don't see AI replacing us, because then that's going to require people to give us the exact requirements of what they want. And so until they're able to give us the exact requirements, we are good. It's part of that partnership. So can it help us get speed to market? Absolutely. But not necessarily the human touch of the back and forth, but just being there and understanding, and like Rain talked about, translating. Just because someone says, I want a pie chart, that doesn't mean that they want the pie chart. They want to dissect, they want a distribution, like those types of things is really where we come into play from the human aspect. We can get faster, but we're still definitely going to be here for that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm completely aligned with that as well. I think, all of these AI chat engines have one thing, and it's a text box, and unfortunately it doesn't fill itself, right? So we all have to be part of that. Prompts, we have to write the prompts. All these AI tools require input for them to be able to output something. And I know we're moving to a world with agents, but at the same time, I still those agents need direction. They need sort of peers to help judge their work as well. So it's super important point to end with there. Okay. I think that's been it. I've really enjoyed the panel. Thank you all of you for your wisdom. I think it's been a really good way to just share our perspectives and just really, understand how we're all thinking about